So this is the second part of my jumper set. In this one, I am doing the more full skirt, and this one I'm doing in a purple corduroy that I got again from Joann's because that's kind of the only store in town. But again, I'm using this pattern, Simplicity's 3673, and you kind of have to do some hunting if you too want to do this pattern. However, it is a great pattern to use. It gives a good silhouette and shape, and it fits me rather well, and even in the bust, and I'm kind of bustier. And I just grabbed my boobs and shit. Oh well. But yes. I used a purple corduroy. It is mostly cotton. I forgot that when I went to go wash it, so it is shrunk a little bit, so I'm going to have to see how it fits again after I record all these. At the end of the video, I'll show you how I wear it so that you get some idea of how it looks and wears, and you can see. So I hope you enjoy the video. I'll see you at the end of it. So here I am cutting out my purple velvet. I will say that velvet is, especially of this wale, which means how the ridges are, this velvet is, this corduroy is very like velvet, as you can tell because I keep saying it's like velvet. But it moves a lot like velvet does. So here I am lining up the shoulder seams again. On this pattern, you sew the shoulder seams before the side seams because the bodice is fully lined. The skirt is not, but the bodice is, which does make it very nice to get on and off. It does have a back seamed zipper, though it would be pretty easy to change over to a side seam zipper if you wanted to. And here I am just, again, lining up the shoulder seam with the lining. This is like a purpley bluish lining. I also use this lining on my suit jacket, which will be in a later video. But I do love this color. I think it is a gorgeous color, and I think it looks pretty good on me. So here I am sewing up the shoulder seams again. Again, I did mess up and sew the side seams and then have to unpick all of that. But that seems to be a running thing I have with this pattern. I just need to remind myself before I start sewing the first couple seams not to do the side seams until after I've got everything set up. Here I am getting ready to attach the lining to the outer bodice. It is a very easy way to do this. Again, I just sewed around the neck opening and the arm side, and then slid the back through the shoulder area and turned it inside out. It lines up pretty well. It lays down nicely. You did on this one, because of how thick and heavy the corduroy, have to go through and hand sew down the lining to the outer bodice, simply because the outer bodice is so much heavier. It wanted to slide down and expose the lining. So I just went through and kind of tacked the lining down a little bit to keep it from doing that. But yes, here I am just sewing up that area, then taking out my pins because I do sew over pins. I don't like having to unpick what I've already sewn, and this just makes it a little bit easier not to do that, for me anyway. You all have your own methods, I have mine. I have seen other sewers do the sew over the pin method. I just find it if you do, please comment down below what this is, because I have not been able to find a way to really sharpen pins back up after they've become dull. Also, if you have a way of sharpening gingham shears, let me know, because mine are starting to get rather dull and I have no way of really getting them sharp again. And I'd like to keep my good shears. And here I am sewing up the side seam. How you do this is you open up that area so that the corduroy and the lining are both exposed to the other sides, and then you just sew that entire seam down. It works rather nicely. So here I am getting ready to put the what are they called again? I always forget this term. It's not pleats, it's not gathers. Oh, I feel like an idiot right now. They are the... I'm just gonna call them tucks right now because I can't remember, but I'm using my pin method, which if you see my previous video about the part 1 of this series, but if you've seen that, then you know that I started using this method to try and preserve the patterns a little bit. But I stick a pin through the circle instead of using a pencil because it creates less friction. But I stick a pin in there and then take away the pattern very carefully so as I don't rip it. And then I take a marking weapon of my choice, usually a pencil of some kind, usually a chalk pencil of some kind that will just rub off after a while. And I take out the pattern, and then I'll mark the pins, and then I'll use a straight ruler and mark from one marking to another with straight lines so that I've got an area to sew. But it works rather well for me. You're welcome to try this method. I just call it a pin method because that's what I do. I pin the point, I mark the point, I mark between the points, and then I sew on the marking. So yes, here I am just doing my stitching. I still am trying to figure out a way of getting a good angle for when I'm actually doing my sewing. I might have to invest in a wobbly legged tripod for right in front of the sewing machine. It's not that expensive, but I'm kind of trying not to do that because I don't want to have to do that. But I'm not sure at how else to get to that spot. And when I do figure it out, it'll probably still be an adjustment for me. And now I'm just lining up the front seam. I'll do the same to the back seam on this. There is no vent on this skirt because it is a more of a circle or a line. It's a fuller skirt, which was somewhat popular during the 50s, and this is an early 50s reprint pattern. So yeah, I just sew up the front seam, and I am rather pleased with how this turns out. You can't really tell where the seam is, which is nice, as opposed to when I did it in the rayon, that you could definitely see the seamage, but at least I lined up the seam in the front with the front of the bodice, so it just creates a nice straight line, which helps because I don't have a lot of straight lines on me. But that does remind me that I want to make a striped dress. Here I am sewing up the front seam. I did speed this up, as you can probably tell. No sewing machine goes that fast. but I was finding that this corduroy was very heavy, so I had to lift and I had to push a lot, because this was a lot like velvet. I'll keep saying that, but it's a lot like velvet. I will say that when you're doing a material like this, it is best to expect problems. So I believe at this point I am sewing up the back. I'm lining up the back material and then I'll sew it up. So what I was first doing was marking where the zipper goes, like where the end of the zipper should be, with 2 pins so I know to stop sewing there. And then I'm just pinning the rest of it so that it's level and that it can't switch around on me. I call the material moving around on its own while I'm trying to sew it switching. So here I am again sewing back up, and what I did was I laid down my needle, sewed over those 2 pins, and sewed backwards over those 2 pins, and sewed forward again, so that wouldn't come undone randomly. Here I am just laying out the top of the skirt with the front of the skirt with the back of the skirt, and pinning, marking matching notches and marks on the top and the bottom. I did find this material a bit stretchy, which helped when I was trying to fit certain areas. I could just pull a little bit and it would lay down nicely. So it was a little bit easier to match up. I will say I probably won't use this weight of corduroy again. I'll probably go with a lighter weight, tighter wale next time. Something a little bit thinner. I will say this material will probably last me a while, and I will be making the best out of the 1 yard of material I have left over when I find a pattern that works. I'm kind of trying to history bound with my aesthetic. I prefer darker colors on me. I'm kind of calling it witchcore, but I'm trying to history bound, which is why I got so excited about this pattern, because you can use this pattern to mimic a medieval girdle, Tudor style, just about any historical style would go well with this jumper, because it's meant to be worn with a blouse. You can wear it with a sleeveless blouse, a long sleeve blouse, or a short sleeve blouse. So it is pretty good for all seasons. Though I will say this corduroy will probably be a winter, fall, spring as opposed to a summer one, but it is not very lightweight. Not at all. But so yes, I am rather excited about this pattern. Okay, here I am lining the bodice up with the skirt, and what I'm doing is I'm going to whip stitch the lining to the seam allowance once it's actually sewn. So here I will pin only the corduroy parts, and then later on I'll go through and lining to this. This pinning does involve pulling the gathers so that area fits there. How I do that is I pin the side seams first, and then I go and pin the front center of the actual bodice to the center seam of the skirt, which does give a good line. And then I'll pin the notch before the gathers, and then I'll tighten the gathers down so the rest of it fits. This allows me better control of where the gathering is going, and allows me to get a smoother finish. But it goes pretty fast when I do it that way. here I am sewing the bodice to the skirt. If you do have any questions, feel free to comment down below and I'll try to explain either what I'm doing or answer the question if you have a question about aesthetic or anything else. I rather enjoy chatting with you all, if that makes sense. Again, these jumpers took 2 days while filming. If I'd just been doing the jumper, it would have taken a day. The next day. Okay, here I am basting down the back seam so that I can put in the zipper, because that's kind of the last step. So once you've got the zipper in, I don't think I actually videoed the zipper in, but once you've got the zipper on, those side seams are on the bias, so I let it hang for, well, overnight for 12 hours. So in the morning, I went and leveled the hem, made sure that it was relatively level. Then I did the mark 2 inches, and then, yeah, sewed up the hem.